Hello, 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 and welcome to another edition of What a Week with myself, Mr. C Comedian, and also my good friend and sidekick, and most importantly, the knowledge of all Black history, Mr. Tony Crossbody. Come on.
Too much of an introduction, right?
Yeah, man. We want to welcome. Bless up, Tony. Just before we do with the pleasantries, I just want to say welcome to everybody who's watching. Whichever platform you are, please remember to like, subscribe, and to share. This is What a Week. It's our show discussing the news and the views from a little Africa, Caribbean kind of flavor, eccentric kind of way. So, Tony, man, how's your week been?
You know, it's been a kind of, it's quiet, to be honest with you. Very quiet, bro. I've been doing a lot of studying, you know, because obviously we share some things with nice people, and we're still in, you know, Black History Year, you know what I mean? So I want to keep myself busy and make sure I keep updated, man. So I've just been busy, sort of like doing a lot of reading and studying. Nothing special.
Good, man. And I like the phrase what you coined there, Black History Year, because 2020, well, what can we say? This is definitely the year of Black history. Most definitely, you know what I mean? It's like I don't feel like this is about Black History Month anymore. This is our year. And listen, to even kick things off, man, it's definitely the year of special things for Black people. Can we give this man a tremendous round of applause, please, as we start with our first story? Come on. Don't worry, the clip isn't there. Lewis Hamilton, ladies and gentlemen.
First story, please.
First story, man. Lewis Hamilton. Come on.
Yeah.
Absolute legend. Celebrates his record-breaking 92nd race win, which now puts him at the top of the leaderboard for all-time Grand Prix wins, beating Michael Schumacher's legendary, how can I put it, milestone of 91. And you know what? You followed Grand Prix?
Yeah, I do, man. I do, bro. And Lewis has got, you know, a little way to go yet before his career ends. So by the time he finishes his career, I mean, that record, you know, not only will be broken and smashed, but his record will be unreachable for a long time to come.
Oh, come on now. Listen, I mean, I remember watching, because my oldest son, since he was around about 2, he would sit down with my stepfather and he would watch the whole Grand Prix. And his hero was Michael Schumacher. And it's through him I started watching Formula One, because to me, it's just man going around in a car going, meow, 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 meow. I was like, no, man, this is, but I sit down and watch it with my son, Tony, and listen, Schumacher was a beast of a driver. And I thought there's nobody in this world who's ever gonna replicate, never mind beat, what Schumacher's done. So for Lewis Hamilton to do it at such a young age is absolutely amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah. No, he's a total beast. I think what for me though, what soured it, you know, has to do with a lot of the comments on social media. You know, we don't take it seriously, but you know, it kind of gives you a reflection of where you're at. So here you have a man of color representing his country, smashing all records, beating everyone, and a lot of the British public, what are they talking about? The fact that he hasn't paid his taxes in this country and that he lives in Monaco. You know what I mean? What's that about? What's that about? You ask for a world champion. You want someone who's unbeatable. You want someone to be proud of, but somehow he's not good enough because why? According to you, he's not paying his taxes in this country.
Listen, and the thing is, it's not even about he hasn't even committed a crime, because you see, like this is what's typical of some section. Let's get this right, because we're not saying that the whole of British society is like this, because most of British society are decent people, you know, and not everybody in Britain is a racist. However, there's a small segment of diehard racists. And you know, they always pop up and show themselves. Now, think about it. I remember again, my dad. He was a bit of a man who liked his horses, and there was a jockey by the name of Lester Piggott. I don't know if you remember him, Tony. Lester Piggott.
Yeah.
Now, Lester Piggott was a man who was convicted of tax evasion.
Yes, he was. Yeah.
Not tax avoidance, because that's legal. Tax evasion, is absolutely it's a crime, and he got put in prison for it. And none of the British public made out any big uproar or anything about it. Not at all. So, you know, the fact that Lewis Hamilton wants to protect his money, which is a smart thing to do. You know, but we know what it's about, really. They're just not happy seeing such a young, vibrant black man absolutely at the top of his game, in you know, with total world dominance. And you know what I liked as well, Tony, is the first thing he did when he got out of the car. Did you see what happened?
Oh, I missed that. What happened?
He went across and he hugged his dad, man.
Oh, dad, yeah. Sorry, I saw that. Yeah.
Man. You know, that image there alone for loads of young black males to see the son acknowledge the father, because we know we get so many stories of missing black fathers, you know, absent black fathers, and here we have a man who's at the top of his game, elite sportsman, and to have his father there as well to congratulate him. I think it was again, it was another magical moment in black history.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the fact that we can't forget the fact that Lewis supports Black Lives Matter. So I think that kind of irks. I think that irks a lot of the population, to be honest, because I kind of follow a little bit of social media and comments. When I see articles concerning our sportsmen or celebrities, I kind of follow the comments, and you kind of get a general sense of where the population is coming from, and you generally find that they like their black celebrities, they like them to win, but they like them, don't talk about your problems, mate. We don't want to hear that. Do you know what I mean? And they turn against you. Do you know what I mean? They like their sportsmen to be like them, right? Yeah. So very Cockney, or Englishy, you know what I mean? And don't talk about that. And if you see things happen to your people, turn a blind eye and just keep winning. And that's what they love. But the minute, it was like Ali, same thing with Ali. They loved him until he started speaking out against the Vietnam War and against the plight of his people. So that is just the reaction that they have. But they don't tell you that. What they tell you is, well, he doesn't pay his taxes and he's not a gentleman. Michael Schumacher was a gentleman and always will be. Michael Schumacher will always be the best. But we know that just they don't say, because obviously they don't want to reveal their true feelings.
Yeah. It's so true. I mean, a little comment there from Jarina Starr. She says, he is with a white woman, he doesn't count. Very interesting track of thought there, Jarina. I don't see what his dating preference has got to do with his professional achievements. However, we hear you.
Right. But it's interesting too, though, that with that, I mean, her opinion is not an isolated one. There is a lot of within our community that, if you're dealing with if you're having an intellectual rhetoric, then basically you've just negated your race, which is a bit harsh, considering the fact that the man is representing and he's publicly putting himself and his reputation on the line by supporting, a movement at this time, which is not exactly popular with white people. So, we like you said, we hear that opinion, but he's doing. If dating a white woman negates him, then what does supporting Black Lives Matter do?
Yes. I totally agree. I think again,
one side, not the other side. If he's doing that and that negates him, well, what does supporting Black Lives Matter do? Putting himself in the firing line of the British public, people who used to adore him, now who dislike him for doing that.
Yeah, and also I think, again, it's not about who he dates, it's about what is he currently doing today. What is he currently doing?
She's not having it. No, she says, please, he's switching sides.
He's switching sides. Jarina, you're a star. We can see that.
Yeah, welcome to the show, Jarina. Thanks for your comment.
Yeah.
What's Pearson saying?
Read that first, please, Tony.
He's pointing out they just want to deflect from what he's achieved. Let us celebrate his achievements. a lot of the affluent people in this country are good at tax evasion. Let's talk about that. But but that's not talked about. Yeah, absolutely, Harrison. You're absolutely right.
Most definitely. Most definitely. And again, I do want to point out the difference between tax evasion and tax avoidance. So what Lewis Hamilton is doing, and also what Jimmy Carter did, is called tax avoidance. It's totally legal. And this is what you should be doing. You should be avoiding from paying too much tax. Again, this is what the Starbucks, the Amazons are doing. All the big multinational companies, this is what they do. They avoid from paying too much tax, which is completely legal to do. Tax evasion, however, like what Wesley Snipes was doing, because he thought he was probably doing tax avoidance, but it worked out that his accountant wasn't as good as he made out to be. So it ended up being tax evasion, and that's why he ended up in prison. So there's a big difference. We all should effectively be practicing tax avoidance. If not, then it's your fault.
Now, it's interesting that Lewis Hamilton's story is actually reflects on the story about Marcus Rashford, who's obviously been campaigning for free dinners for youngsters over the summer and stuff. And then
holidays. That's correct.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I've been following that story. And what are people saying? Well, the country seems to be split if you're going to go by social media. Some are saying, well, that's a great thing, young man, to be campaigning and using your platform. And other people are saying, what are you talking about? You got millions of pounds, so why don't you take some of your money and go, rather than going and bleating off about school kids' dinners?
Well, again, very, very interesting points of views. A lot of people feel that because once you're rich, you should really only affect change through your pocket. But I think, again, him using his platform and his influence through social media and being on the world stage highlights certain things which would otherwise go under the radar. I wasn't even aware that the Tories switched again. I wasn't even aware that they was having a debate in Parliament as regards to children who cannot afford children whose parents cannot afford to feed them during the 6 weeks holidays. And again, this is what we've got to understand, that during school time, they're getting free school meals. But once the term time finishes, these children are literally left to fend for themselves because their parents don't have the ability to feed them. So I think, there was a Tory MP, I forgot her name. She put it absolutely beautifully, where she said that, I wasn't aware that we were still living in the times of Charles Dickens and Oliver Twist. She akined it to, which I think, which is a brilliant way of putting things, because, if we want to classify ourselves, so-called Britain, as looking at other countries as being third world countries, yet we cannot afford to feed our own children, then who really is the third world country, we should ask. Yeah.
But on a positive note, I mean, both Lewis Hamilton and
Marcus
Rashford, we should really feel proud of the fact that they are doing something consciously, right? For people. I don't see any other footballers standing up and wanting to fight for underprivileged children who can't get a meal. And the fact is that the guy is sticking his ground, basically opposing the government, and he's getting a lot of support for that. So that is such a noble thing, right? To do, use your platform to help people, more disadvantaged people than yourself, and taking the time out from your schedule to do that. So yeah, it's great. It's great. We should be proud of him.
Well, listen, I'm extremely proud of him. I can say that when it comes to football, Manchester United is a team that I hate with a passion, especially their fans. However, Marcus Rashford, we salute you, sir. We salute you.
We do.
It seems like we are in a climate of change at the moment, Tony. With obviously things have kicked off with the whole George Floyd and the Black Lives Matters protests. Again, we've seen a month of blackness on our TV screens and in our adverts. It just seems to be a wash of black excellence at the moment. And it seems like it's now trickled over into the music industry, because our next story is talking about how the UK music industry might be set for a little stir up as regards to how our music is being labeled. Let's have a look at this headline. So there we go. UK music industry urged to drop the offensive term BAME.
Wow, when we saw this, we sort of celebrated that, didn't we? Because we've been talking about it on this show, you know, this whole categorization and labeling stuff, and well, the vast majority of us hate this term BAME, right? Who came up with a name? Well, I'm sure we're quite clear it wasn't us, right? It's something that's been given. And the music industry used to refer to us as urban, if you remember, they call it urban music, urban charts, right?
Yeah.
So it's all this labeling that is been thrown at us, and unfortunately, some of us really sort of lap this stuff up. But it's great to see that the music industry is now making steps moving forward to basically change this.
Yeah, 100%. Just backtracking there, just want to give acknowledgement to Jackie Pearson, who says, "Good evening, gentlemen." Good evening, Jackie.
Jackie.
She's also pointed out that Raheem Sterling is doing his part for the youngsters as well. So
yes.
yeah, Raheem Sterling is definitely, again, you know, being very visible, being very vocal as regards to things affecting our community and all communities as well. So just going back to the BAME music industry, I mean, this is something that I kind of pointed out many years ago, even through the stand-up comedy, the fact that, you know, the labeling of our culture and our things is so important that we give ourselves our own labels. Because again, I remembered when they started, because vinyl was still around at the time when they changed things from, because what you had in record shops, I'm talking things like Tower Records, HMV, you had segments of music, the genres of music. So you had your pop, you had your rock and roll, you had your rock, you know, your jazz or whatever. But with our music, it was always reggae, soul, R&B, and then overnight came in this urban thing. And, you know, I think the description of our music is a reflection of where we've come from and who we are. So when you hear soul music, what does that mean to you, Tony?
Oh man, it's music deep down from that place, isn't it? That place, that deep place that nobody else can basically get to when expressing themselves.
Exactly. And you know, like soul music, if we think about great soul artists, so like for myself, Luther Vandross, Teddy Pendergrass, Vanilla Ice. No, I'm just playing. You know, Stevie Wonder, all of these great soul artists had messages to give us, messages of love to give us. You know, reggae artists for yourself, Tony, who was your favorite reggae artists?
Oh my goodness. You know, I was a fan, I must admit, I was a big fan of Garnet Silk.
Yes, Mama Africa.
Yeah, he had the ability to make people cry, you know, with his voice. You know, we can talk about Barry Salmon, Luciano. These are great soulful singers too.
Absolutely. So our music, when it was labeled correctly, reflected the correct journey of that music. Even R&B, rhythm. That's what we got. When we dance, we got rhythm. And blues. Blues is the story of our pain and our journey of life.
Right.
But then when they came in with this urban, there's no connection to us. No connection to our past, no connection to our or who we are. And that's why we've got music like what we've got now. All the drill, the I call it the Mickey Mouse music, mumble rap. That because it comes from a place that has no definitive name. So it's important for us to reclaim the labels, especially with our music, so that we can now get our music back on track and hopefully our community back on track with the music that they're listening to.
You know, I mean, I've just always had a problem with labels that always lumped us in with other people who we have nothing to do with.
Yes,
right?
yes.
The classic. You know, I can go into the history of that, you know, where that's come from, because we've been tied to so many different groups. It's one of the reasons why, you know, our mission, right, to basically have equal rights and justice is very, very difficult, because we are lumped into groups, into categories that have nothing to do with us specifically as a people. So we can never really stand up and have our own platform because we belong to, so for example, diversity, right? If you think of diversity, black people are in that group, right?
Yes.
So a number of other groups. Do you see?
Yeah.
So we can't have our own platforms. We have to be labeled alongside other groups, and this BAME is just another episode of that.
Well, you know, again, it's the classic misdirection tactic, isn't it? The fact that if we can get lumped in, if everything else can get lumped in with our problems or our experiences, therefore it dilutes the urgency of the need to deal with what we are actually going through and what we've experienced and still experiencing. So again, that's why that has happened.
It's a tactic, right? So all Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. You see what I mean? So you can't get the straight rum; they have to put the coke in it, right? Yeah. And that's the tactic all the time. It's always to mothball your issue. So if you notice, I mean, we're in the Black Lives Matter season, but have we heard anything about reparations?
Oh no.
No, exactly. Because there's a mothballing going on. That conversation is not on the table. You see,
it's so true. It's so true.
You think about that. That's one of the greatest things that we need to resolve, right? A formal apology, right? Reparations, because of course we've been paying up to 2015. We've been paying the slave masters the compensation that they received, right?
Right.
But we can't talk about that.
When you say an apology, an apology without financial.
No. An apology comes with financial. You know, because obviously before you
has to,
money,
yes,
it has to be acknowledged, right? It has to be a formal apology, and the money has to follow. I mean, it's not. We don't want an apology and then nothing. But so when I say apology, I mean apology, acknowledgement, apology, pay up, right?
Yeah.
But that conversation is not on the table, and that's what I find so interesting in this season and in this time, right? And that. Whenever, if you want to bring that up, then you're going to be mothballed on it. So you know, it's just for people to be aware of that. Okay, yes, we're in Black Lives Matter season. Okay, you know, we want to have that oppression ease up. We want equal rights and justice. But hold on a second, that needs to be accompanied by a conversation about reparations and the fact that we, the descendants of those who were enslaved, contributed through our taxes monies to pay back those slave owners who claimed they lost business, and we were paying that up to 2015. So
seriously, do you honestly believe that any kind of westernized government is gonna, number one, apologize, and number two, offer some kind of financial compensation, Tony? Do you believe that will happen in your lifetime?
Well, put this power in 2008, right? A committee of very senior black people went to him and said, look, we want to put this on the agenda to the United Nations. And he wasn't having it.
Of course not, because he didn't want to be the first black president to be assassinated.
He didn't want that. So, I mean, if you can't get that move with a black man in power, right, of some influence, then the answer is obviously they're very reluctant, right? They don't even want to go down that road. That road is not even open for conversation. And that's why, even though we're talking about, you know, we're in a season where there's more representation on TV and we're talking about we're not talking about reparations. We're not talking about, we can watch as many TV shows about, you know, diving to the bottom of the ocean and picking up old anchors and picking up bottles from the 17th century that, you know, the enslaved people might have drunk from, but we're not talking about compensation.
Yes. How does that help little Tariq in Harlesden today? Okay, right. Look, we need to hear your comments. Those of you who are watching on Facebook or YouTube, please remember as well to like, subscribe, and to share. It's What a Week. It's not just for me and Tony to talk and have a debate. We want to hear your comments. We want to know your views as well. Moving things on. There are times, though, when black people, when we want to try and do something positive for our people, every now and then we get it a little bit wrong. The gentleman's name was Matt Simpson. I'm sure you all remember this story. He was working at, I think he still does work at Pure Gym in Luton. He is now, he was the bright spark, shall we say, with a dull light, who decided that he would do a 12 years a slave workout for his gym in Luton. This is what's been happening with poor Matt Simpson at the moment. This is the latest headline.
I think this story first broke, didn't it, about 3 weeks ago? We first covered it very briefly, and I joked.
You did?
Those who saw the show, I joked, wouldn't it be funny if it was a black guy that created this workout?
Well, there he is.
Lo and behold, unknown to myself, I am a prophet, because here we have this gentleman who did create the 12. You know, I can't even say it, man. It's just like, honestly,
a slave workout.
Yeah, you know, you can't make this up, bro.
Well, listen, I know Luton very well, bro, and sometimes in Luton you got time on your hands. And listen, driving to Luton from London on a Friday afternoon, man, during rush hour. Listen, you can make the wrong decisions or two. He's now saying though he's receiving racist abuse,
right?
And I think he's mentioned that he received racist abuse from black people.
Nah, really? Nah, man, I don't believe that.
He's allegedly even the N-word was used.
I think someone said they wanted their black card back. They wanted to take back his black card. And you know you have to ask yourself, right? You have to ask yourself, what is the thought process that goes through a black man's mind? He doesn't like, he's not a young kid, right? But what goes through your mind when you come up with this great idea? I mean, did you not know the history of your people, that you want to exploit, you know, the experiences by making a workout? I said, well, you know, the slaves worked hard, and this workout is just as hard as what your ancestors went through.
Well, I think this is where sometimes we get the disconnect. Why there's repeatedly people are repeatedly saying that it's important to know our history. Because when you're disconnected from the truth of our history, the pain of our history, the experience of our history, you can then start to think of, oh, you know what? Oh man, I felt like I was working like a slave today. You can say things flippantly like that because you have no real idea what it was like to work like a slave. You have no real visual stimulus for you to see the horrors of what it was to work like a slave. And I think he could have only have made that connection between a workout and 12 years a slave because he didn't actually even see the film itself. If he saw that film, there's no way he would want to try and make a connection between something which is you know, going to the gym and working for something where you want a great result at the end, and try and connect it with such a painful experience. So I think, again, this is the reason why education, especially of our history, is so important, Tony. So important. Yeah,
you know, I really want to believe that narrative that you say. I don't want to believe the fact that, you know, the whole experience is such a flippant thing in his own mind that he can actually make a workout. And, you know, went to his bosses and said, "Oi, governor, guess what? I got this workout. Yeah, 12 years a slave. What we do these curls and we make the weights really heavy. Yeah, it's a great idea." And the manager goes, "Yeah, great idea. Let's do it."
I think the manager said it because the managers said that they wanted to sack him from a long time, but they know they couldn't sack him during Black Lives Matter protesting. So when he came up with that, it was like, yeah, no, that's a good idea, mate. I'll tell you what, mate. Post it on your social media, mate.
And so when the story broke, they soon distanced themselves and said, well, as they always do in these organizations, oh, well, we had no idea. You know what? Whenever you hear a tale of lone gunman, right? It was a lone renegade gunman who worked on his own, right? You've got to smell a rat with that story, right? There's no way that guy could have had a workout like that, program for Pure Gym that got public, and the management did not approve it. 100%. Obviously, they want to distance themselves, so they're going to say, well, he did it on his own.
Well, I think he has to take the whole blame, and I think it's good that the work company did that. Because, you know, so many times what happens with these companies, and I think to me, this is one of the things what should happen at all kind of, in all of these kind of racist kind of incidents, is that the company usually takes the whole blame for it, or the company, but there's somebody who's behind that. So when we talk about like the H&M advert, somebody came up with that concept that they wanted a black child to. So this is where we have to find, because probably it's that one person who may be the racist, not so much the company. So
right.
we don't, if we don't filter through to find out who made that decision.
Right. Who signed that off?
That person. Yes, that's right.
Let's go through the chain of command. So the guy went to his manager and said, "I got this idea," and the manager said, "Yeah." So, you know, it's just unbelievable, bro. I mean, when we talk about, you know, we often talk about privately about how black people have to get together and unite, but these types of stories only highlight to you some of the issues that we face to that unity, right? It just highlights the struggle. And basically, you know, a history that we have now, this basically is his contribution to the struggle, right? So in the annals of black history, right, this gentleman has said, well, here's my contribution. I made a workout called 12 Years a Slave, you know, based upon the experiences of the descendants of enslaved people, right? So that's his contribution.
Listen, some very, very good points made by Divinity, Divinity. Number one, they're saying, why did he choose to focus on slavery? Very, very good point. She also starts, he or she starts off with saying, evening all, it's also important to know the glory of the history of our past. The glory of our history prior, during, and after the African Holocaust. And very well put there as well. I like the fact it's not slavery, it's the African Holocaust. Absolutely. Very much so, very much so.
Now that's a very good point that they raised there. You see, why mention, slavery, right? And why? Because everybody knows that you don't, even a dog knows that you mentioned that or refer to that in a very trivial way to black people, they're going to get upset about it.
Yes.
You know this.
Yeah.
This is why I struggle to think that, you know, like what you said, where, you know, because you know, workouts are hard and slavery was hard, and he put the two together. And no, man, we had a conversation about this a few weeks ago, talking about how certain companies and brands have abused black people in terms of insulting them in order to get name recognition.
Well, listen, it gets worse, Tony, because all right, Pure Gym may have, you know, as companies go in the UK, may be of a reasonable size. However, this next company should really know better. Let's have a look at this. Sainsburys in Oxford decided that they would run a 12 Years a Slave mannequin to promote the DVD. So they decided that they would get a mannequin. God bless them though, because it's a white one, Tony. You know, they're sensitive. Now, what we'll do, yeah, we'll get a white one. Yeah, that's what we'll do, because we're going to balance it out. Yeah. Now we won't give them reparations, but what we'll do, we'll get a white mannequin.
Yeah. I wonder if that brother from Pure Gym works there as well.
Yeah, probably, man. They dress it up. So I mean, the only thing that I think what was missing from the mannequin, they should have had a whip next there. So you know, when you bought the DVD, you could have whipped the mannequin as well. But I think, you know, black people would take it even further. If they left the whip, we wouldn't have whipped the mannequin. We would have whipped the manager, giving some cat o' nine in his back.
And you know what? For me, is, you know, what's sad about this, right? You know, there are certain groups in society that are quite empowered, right? Who have had less profile in terms of time. They've had less profile than us. Yet they are more empowered than us, because you can't actually say anything about them without being accused of hate. And yet people can go about putting 12 years a slave mannequin, making workouts, and nobody says anything. Boo! And doesn't that demonstrate that we are disempowered, though we've been fighting for this for the longest time? And that's what hurts me. That's what hurts me the most, is that there are no laws framed against, insulting black people or insulting their history or using their history for triviality. But do that to other groups and see what happens to you.
Well, we know what would happen with other groups is that they come together and they make a lot of noise. And with that noise, they also back it up with their economical power. So again, until we start coming together, organizing ourselves together strategically, and also making sure that we make the right kind of moves economically to put pressure on, be it, whether it be Sainsburys, whether it be, TV stations, whether it be newspapers, whatever, our experience will always be the same. Candrine says it's all about mindsets. It's all about what mindsets. What exactly do you mean, Candrine? It's all about mindsets. Pray tell us more.
We don't seem to have that political power that other groups do to have laws set up to protect us, right? At least from, as I said, there's certain groups that you can't talk about without, the minute you mention the name of the groups, people are on your case, man. Even people listening to you might go, oh dear, be careful, right? But where black people are concerned, 150 years allegedly after the abolition of slavery, and look, we're still getting abused, and there's nothing there. There's no protection for our rights, and we just go up with it forever and a day.
Well, I think as well, Tony, in addition to that, it's very much people behave like that, or society behaves like that, because history shows them exactly what black lives are worth. So again, if you repeatedly see through the media, through what's happening all over America, or what's happening in this country, if you see the systematical, how can I put it, covert and sometimes very overt racism, which is dished out to black people on a daily basis, then you realize that you can get away with literally murder with it, or the how can I put it, literally just taking the absolute Michael Jackson is the better word, which is the second choice in my head of what I was going to say. But literally, you can get away with murder with what you want to say about black people and how you want to treat them.
And this is why I have a personal policy that I don't support slave movies, right?
Right.
Because for me, while it may seem like entertainment and people think that they're learning history, all that's being done is that your mind is being cemented with this whole thing about slavery, right? Where you as a black person going and saying, look how we've been dogged out. Look at, so slave is for you. White people go and watch it and go, oh, we are the superior ones. We are the masters. That's why we're ruling the world. Look, we've got them. And that's all that feeds. Even the new series of Roots, you notice these movies keep coming back over and over again, right? And for me, I just feel like I just can't support them, because they reinforce a stereotype, right, which is not helpful to us.
Well, I've got mixed views, Tony. I hear you, and I agree with the point that you make. However, I think it's important still because the full history is not being taught. So I think what happens is that, especially the next generation always becomes more complacent than the generation before it. So, like I've had conversations with some of my cousins, for example, who are, early, let's say late 20s, early 30s. And their experience is that, you just get on with it. There's not a problem, or blah, blah, blah. The reasons why certain people haven't achieved certain things is because, of the way how they talk, or they absolutely believe that there's no kind of racist kind of glass ceilings or whatever. And that's because they're not fully aware of what's happened before them. And because they can walk down the road and nobody calls them any names, they honestly believe to a certain degree that it's not that big a deal. So sometimes there has to be some, because I don't know how you felt. The first time I saw Roots, it made me very much aware of what had gone on before. Because I obviously would have been aware of slavery, but to actually see it to see how we were treated, and to see the experience. And again, within there, don't get me wrong, there's the little hidden kind of messages and of family and various other things, and the power of identity, you know, being whipped like that so that you want to try and hold on to your name.
Yeah, but this is my point, I think, Mr. C, right? Whereby it's a very much, the story being told is very much a white, you know, a Eurocentric version of slavery, right? You don't see no films about, okay, maybe Nat Turner is the only exception I can think
Harriet
of.
Tubman.
Right? Harriet Tubman. But I mean, okay, you don't see no movies about how the Haitians, for example, overcame the French, right? And basically and
they have created one. They have done one. They have done one.
Which one's this one? What's that?
What's his name? What's the guy from Haiti? Toussaint? Is it Toussaint?
Yeah, Toussaint Louverture. Yeah.
They have done a film. I can't remember the name of the actor, but
overwhelmingly, and you got me. But overwhelmingly, most of the films are about having you in subjection, suppression, right, and oppression, right. And so people who go into those movies have those ideas constantly reinforced in their minds, right. And just for me, I'm like, you know, I'm not really feeling that. And you know who are funding these movies, right? And the stories that they want told.
Yeah.
And therefore, for me, I just don't think Black people should be supporting that. And what we need is our own people telling us our history. I think that as we've been discussing these last few weeks, a lot of history that we've been taught is nothing but lies. So you can't, you can't trust other people to tell you your history. You can't. You have to have people within your own community who do the work and grind over this information, and then basically let them come and talk to you about it.
So let's tell our own stories. 100%, Tony. I'll say that there was one film, one recent so-called slave film, which, to be honest with you, it was created by a white guy. However, I absolutely loved it for one reason. I'm talking about Django.
Oh yeah. Okay, yeah, that's probably the possible exception. When I said that movie I did see and I enjoyed that very much. I have to say.
Django. Yeah, no spoilers, but again, it's good to see a Black man go through that experience because of his love for his Black woman. And for me, I thought, when was the last time I saw that in a movie?
Right.
You know.
Right.
That it's not about, he's not doing all of this for money. He's not doing all of this for fame. He's doing it because he loved his woman, his Black woman.
Yeah,
so, you know, to me, Django was a love story. Ironically.
I think Samuel L. Jackson stole that movie, though, to be honest with you.
He did.
Wrong. It was Samuel L. Jackson and what's the guy's name?
Titanic.
Yeah. They stole the movie, you know.
Just backtracking.
Yeah.
Candrine says, if the Black community came together in unity and coordinated responses to public examples of racism, the Black community would be in a better position. That means having Black community leaders who are supported by the Black community. Other groups have got this right. Well done.
Yes,
absolutely. So
true. Good point. Do we know who our community leaders even are? Do we have community leaders right now?
Well, we'll speak about one a little bit later on, which will be one of the last stories we touch on. She also says Roots and Kunta Kinte films has highlighted how slavery was practiced and stirred feelings of resentment, which is so true.
That's true.
Divinity says it comes down to us making sure that we teach our children the full of our history, our full history. We have to remove the expectation that schools will or even should be teaching our children this. So true.
Yeah. Good point, Divinity. But the only problem is you can only teach your children what you know. So obviously the responsibility first is that parents need to learn so that they can actually pass this stuff on. And a lot of us as parents don't know. That's the issue. And again, a
lot of parents were miseducated. If you're first generation in this country, would probably have gone through a very racist schooling experience, and probably didn't even complete school with full qualifications. And we see this again when you see people writing over social media that, you know, that you can see the lack of, how can I put it, the lack of understanding of the very basics of even English language.
Yeah.
But yeah,
the first generation of the Windrush people who came across, they were also heavily indoctrinated. You know, they're now sort of like in their 50s and 60s, and up to now, really, that indoctrination is still sitting in their mind. So, I mean, we do have. I think that the next generation now, who are sort of like 20s and 30s with the internet, I think are probably more clued up generally because, you know, they have that information to hand and they're interested in learning about it. But, you know, we do have a long way to go.
Definitely have a long way to go. But listen, I think that there are some leaders within our community, Kendrine, and again, it seems to me like some of the leaders are the black women. And it pains me to say this as a black man, because as much as I love women, especially black women, I have to say that black ladies, Tony, at this moment, I mean, Jackie points it out, Loose Women had 4 of our queens on the screen at the same time. And it was just absolutely wonderful to see. They even dropped a little Beres on there. And
didn't they?
And however, can you believe ITV received complaints about the program? Of course.
What a surprise.
Yeah.
I saw a tweet. Someone said, did I wake up in Africa this morning? Because when I turned on
and you can even hear them. It's almost like them saying, flipping natives, mate. Where the heck have I woken up to this morning? Right. In Africa, right? It's bad enough seeing one black face on TV, but not in all 4 corners, mate.
You have to. It's like, you know, you live your life pretty much expecting that. Do you know what I mean? I mean, the day, you know, if the day ever came where you saw, you know, like let's say for example, they did a whole day of black TV on.
It's coming next year, Channel 4.
Right. Let's wait till that. And everybody said, yes, it was great, or it wasn't my cup of tea, but it was good to see representation, and there were no criticisms of it based upon the color of the people. That would be a move forward. But the reality is that whenever black people come on the screen, right, do a show or whatever it is, if they're not singing, dancing, or cleaning, or doing some sort of menial work, then, you know, you're gonna, unfortunately, you're in a foreign land, right, and that is what you're gonna get.
Definitely, man. For me, it was a wonderful moment. It brings us on to again another beautiful, wonderful black queen. You know, it's so good to see her in the Houses of Parliament with her hair in its natural state in locks. We're talking, of course, MP for Brent South, Dawn Butler, who said this in the Houses of Parliament as regards to Black History Month.
I'm also passionate about history and how history is taught in our country. At the moment, history is taught to make one group of people feel inferior and another group of people feel superior. And this has to stop. We need to look at history and we need to improve it. Labour's Emancipation Educational Trust is vital and it's an investment that is long overdue. Therefore, part of the solution is recognising the role that each of us plays in each other's lives and understanding that to progress it should not mean destruction or dehumanising of another person, but an understanding of each other. Thank you.
Lady for giving way, could she just expand on which parts of the curriculum she believes make black children feel inferior?
So, history needs to be decolonised. My honourable friend from Erecton Thamesmead has already discussed how you can go through your whole of the GCSE and not have reference to any black authors at all. You can go through history thinking that, you know, the people that were enslaved were not a part of the uprising. You could go through history and not understand the richness of Africa and the Caribbean. You can go through history and not understand all the leaders in the black community. I mean, I'm surprised that the ministers actually asked me that, because it's so well documented that history needs to be decolonized. If you look at everything from the Runnymede Trust, if you look at all these organizations, I mean, it's absolutely amazing. But absolutely, the minister, I'll give way.
I will address the issues around decolonizing the curriculum at the end of my speech. But she will acknowledge that even though there may not be enough black authors, there are other racial groups such as Chinese, Asian, and so on, who we don't believe are inferior. So if it's just the number of people who look like you, who've written books, who's making you inferior, why are black children different from all those other racial groups?
Well, there's no other group where they've been systematically stripped of their humanity throughout history, where colonization has meant that they've gone to their country and captured them and taken them by force to another country, where they have been raped, where have been thrown overboard in the sea. There's no other group that has happened to. And I'm also going to explain in my speech why it is so important that history is taught in its fullness. If the minister takes time to listen, I think I might just teach her a little something. I'd give way.
Yeah.
Dawn Butler, I stand corrected. MP for Brent Central, not Brent South there. Speaking in the Houses of Parliament. Well, look.
But come on. Who's that MP though? Who's that? Come on, bro. I don't know. This seems to be one of those shows this week where you know, black men and women are sort of tripping over themselves, right? Because they really don't seem to understand, right? You know, wait, hold on a second. What Mr. C?
Yes,
can you explain that?
Well, I think what's it saying?
Yeah, Divinity. Exactly.
I'll tell you who that person was, Divinity. That person was the manager for Pure Gym in Luton, who also works part-time as the manager for Sainsburys in Oxford. That is MP. Please forgive me, however, it's what a week, and it's time for us to talk it how we have to talk it. That is MP Cocoon. That's who that was. The fact that she can even ask those questions and sit down and the way how she had her arms crossed, I don't know how Dawn Butler never went over there and grab her in her head and say, "What with you?
Right.
Huh? Who you here represent? Eh? Right. Give her two."
And you see, again, we go back to this point which we just discussed earlier when we were talking about the Pure Gym argument. It's like, look, the whole point is that, you know, there needs to be some form of unifying amongst black people to come together, and yet you notice a division in ideology and how, you know, people have a different way of looking at things. They think like the colonizer, right?
Yeah.
They are put in your way as stumbling blocks and opposers for you to get basic human rights, right? Being taught your history, and this is the battle we've got to overcome, black people. This is what you're really looking at. Not everybody that looks like you is for you or for the struggle.
Exactly. Kandrine says it's surprisingly her opponent is a black Roman with the mind of a white mindset. Eloquently put. I know. No, I think black Roman is correct. Not even black woman. She's a Roman. You know, 100%, man. She's well. Anyway, look.
But we have to give credit to Dawn Butler, the way she handled that. Very, very well handled. Yeah. And you could see underneath she was steaming. She was steaming for a beating, right? But she really handled herself very well, very professionally. And at the end, you can see, look, I've had enough of your nonsense. You know what I mean? It's like, look, you need to learn a thing or two. And it's just unbelievable, bro. The ignorance that are in some sectors of the community. You know, that they can. So in what way are the kids gonna feel disadvantaged because of what they? I mean, dude.
A complete. She was definitely MP Uncle Ruckus there.
Why?
It beggars belief. So anyway, Dawn was talking about the Emancipation Education Trust, which the Labour Party is trying to get put in force. we wish them all the best with it, man, because, you know, as Dawn quite rightly said, with the points which she made, it is very much so needed within this country. Listen.
Yeah. Quick to Charmaine Bradshaw. She says, and maybe that MP is our Candace Owens. For those who don't know, is the American equivalent of that MP there, right? So,
apart from that one, it's so black. She wouldn't be called Candace. She'd be called Can't Dance. It's
right. I mean, you know, we don't. You know, this needs to be expected. A struggle is not just an external one, but sadly also an internal one.
Yeah. Jackie says again, where's the support as a black woman to Dawn? The other woman needs to go sit down. I don't think she would understand if Dawn said to her, "For God, sit down." It would just go straight over her head. She wouldn't have the foggiest what that meant.
You know, I wouldn't be surprised if that MP got promoted and you're going to see in a much more senior position. You know, for that performance.
I think, well, to be honest with you, you know, if we just looked at the attendance of that particular debate, you could see how important it was to certain parties. And also, I think that she was sent to disrupt Dawn because she had the hue to say what she wanted to say without it being looked at being anything as a racial kind of thing.
Yes. This is an age-old technique. And again, you know, you always watch out. They always send out. They've always got black people in their employment to send out against other black people because they can't send white people out because it looks racist.
Yeah.
So they send other black people out there with the promise that there is incentives for you if you perform well and do what we tell you, you're going to be promoted. And this is the problem. There are always black people out there. If they're incentivized enough, they will do this.
Yeah. I mean, Sean Collins literally says what you're saying there, echoes what you're saying there, Tony. She says, sadly, there are many lost black folk. I once worked with a woman, said if we were alive during slave times, she'd be in the house and me with my dark skin would be in the fields. Look at this devil.
Right.
Wow.
Right. You know, I mean, and this is, people don't understand that we are living in a 21st century plantation. You're not, you know, the fact that we are living in a technological age does not mean the plantation days are over. They are still here. So those that work in the house, right, that work with Massa and do Massa's bidding, they stay out away from the hardship of outside, and they're given privileges. And one of the privileges they're given is to spy on you, to oversee you, and they willingly do it because they get rewards. And that's, we joke about it now, don't we? We say, oh, I've got to go, when you go to work tomorrow, I've got to go to the plantation. But we're not joking.
Listen, you know what, Tony? We'll finish up on this just before you take us down our little history lesson for What a Week this week. But again, this is why it's so important to look back into history and look at things. Because I always was amazed when I used to watch cowboy and Western films, how the only way the cowboys could get anywhere near the Indians is because they had an Indian scout in their camp. Did you notice? Yeah. And they're the ones who could say, oh, listening on, by the hooves, they went. And this is a tactic which certain segments of society have used over many years to mess up our things. You know, same thing with the Black Panther Party. They had people put in there to infiltrate, and oh man, and rightly said, man, there's always seems to be one who's willing to turn Judas for their 5 pieces of silver. Or is it
that plays a large part in the history of how we even got here. You know what I mean?
So listen, Tony, it's that time of the week where we go back down history lane to look at some of the stories told and some of the stories which were never unfolded before our eyes. Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a little bit of Black history from What a Week with our historian, Mr. Tony Crossbody. What have you got for us, Tony?
Yeah, so if we can start from slide number 4, right? Slide number 4, that's the Africa map.
I'll just quickly read that. Dawn's lasting words were about education her given. She didn't understand where she was coming from. I would have loved to have heard the remainder of the conversation. The struggle is real. Sad as we have to fight between ourselves and the lack of black allies in a position that we need. Thank you very much, Carolyn. So sorry, Tony, back to yourself.
That's a good point, Carolyn. So we were talking last week, and I want to sort of repeat some of the things I said last week again this week, because obviously, because we've been in front of a television, a lot of us, since we were 5 years old, and been in the school system for maybe at least 12, if not 15, 16 years, we may not realize the level of our indoctrination. A lot of what we've learnt has been supplemented by the media, by documentaries, for example, on BBC about history, and we've pretty much been written out of it. And one of the tactics used to diminish black contribution to history is this whole idea that black people only came out of Africa. That is something that basically a lot of historians say. So whenever you see a painting with a black child or a woman or a black man, they're always some sort of slave from Africa. That is the narrative. And we've been indoctrinated to accept that narrative. Now, the problem with that is if you accept that black people only came out of Africa, the implication is that white people came from everywhere else. Do you see? If you accept that black people only came out of Africa, then the implication of that is white people came from everywhere else. And that means that whenever history has been written about in various parts of the world, our indoctrinated minds basically goes to thinking, oh, it must be European, oh, it must be white people. And, you know, we've even been taught, or we've been tried to be indoctrinated with this whole idea that even Egypt, apparently, is not a black civilization. But as we're going to see, it clearly is. Next slide. So in this next slide, which we're waiting for, there was a recent discovery. There was a recent discovery a few years ago of this man on the left called Cheddar Man. He was found in, I think it was Lancashire, in some caves that I think we call the Cheddar Caves, hence the name Cheddar Man. And a DNA reconstruction of him was done. And we were told by scientists and anthropologists that this was the first man, the first peoples that inhabited these islands, the British Isles, inclusive of Ireland. Now, when this first broke, a lot of people in England said, nah, that's a lot of nonsense. That's not a black man because he's got blue eyes. Apparently, black people don't have blue eyes, according to their understanding. But as you can see, with the beautiful girl on the right-hand side, black people do have blue eyes. So this is the original man, 7,000 BC, apparently, he was dated as being on this continent. So if black people were here first and nobody else was here, how can we have all these white paintings of kings and all these monarchs and so forth? Well, here's the reason why. Next slide. The next slide tells us why a lot of these paintings that we see and are shown on TV and in museums are of white characters, because a lot of them are fake. Yep, I said it. A lot of the paintings of monarchs are fake. Next slide. Here is a classic example of a fake painting. This painting claims to be of a gentleman, a prince in fact. His name is Charles Lennox, Duke of Richmond, and he was the son of Charles II, who was King of England. Now, how do we know this painting is fake? Well, a contemporary who lived around the time wrote in the accompanying page there, as you can see next to the picture, describing this very character that we're looking at as someone with black complexion, much like King Charles, and King Charles being his father. So does this painting show a man of black complexion? Clearly not. And this backs up, and there are many examples like this in British history that you will find where characters are painted white, but they're actually described as black. Next slide. So here is his father. This is King Charles II, affectionately known as the Black Boy. No prizes for why he got that name. But he is the father of the previous chap. The writing there tells you, describing his son, he says that he's black in complexion, much like his father. And this is his father, Charles II. Next slide. But we're not just confined to the UK when we're looking for black rulers and monarchs. We can go all the way across to Russia. And here we have an original painting of Peter the Great, the Emperor of Russia. Yes?
Wow, don't tell me this. I learned about this guy at school so many times and they never mentioned this color at all, man.
Black Emperor of Russia. You will never be told that. They never want to share this stuff. You have to, Mr. C, when you're doing this sort of research, right, it's like you have to be like a detective, because a lot of this information is not readily available. You've got to go around and start digging. And fortunately, there's some very good black resources that you can use. Good, man. And so...
Black Columbo.
Yeah, you've got to be like Columbo with this thing because it's not being taught, and the information, you just really got to dig for it. You've got to really be wanting to find it to actually receive it. So next slide, please. Now, this man here is another Russian, right? His name is Alexander Pushkin. He is a famous playwright, famous novelist, revered Russian figure.
No. Pushkin was a man of color.
How you mean? Right? So we're talking about Russia here. It's not even like we talk about the continent of France or not continent of Europe. We're talking far into the east, right? Russian. These are native Russians. These are not people out of Africa as we have been sold. They were on the continent long before anybody else. But every time you see a black picture, what's the story? Oh, he's from Africa.
Look at him again, good, Let me look at him good again, master. All right.
Yeah. So that is the famous Russian novelist. Next slide, please. Here's a famous French general. His name is Alexander Dumas. His grandson, also called Alexander Dumas, wrote the famous Man in the Iron Mask.
And Three Musketeers, isn't it? No?
And Three Musketeers, correct. That's right. But Alexander Dumas Sr. was a general in the French army, and he was much hated. Him and Napoleon had a very strong rivalry. But he was a fearless general, very brave soldier in the French army during the Napoleonic Wars. So basically, what we're seeing here, we're seeing all these characters turn up out of Europe. Next slide, please. If you're wondering who this character is, this is King Philip II of Spain, Spanish king who ruled Spain at the height of Spanish power, right? That is not normally the picture you will see of him if you do a Google search of King Philip II, but that, I assure you, is the man. So far, we've seen monarchs in Britain, monarchs in Russia, monarchs in Spain, and we have evidence that the first man to live in the British Isles, to come from the British Isles, was a black man. So what it is indoctrination keeps us from realizing that Europe was originally a black continent, which was eventually invaded and the blacks were pushed out. Next slide, please. Here we see an Italian crest from a famous family in Italy called the Pucci family.
Well, we don't know about Pucci, but black people know about Gucci. I can tell you that, Tony.
Yes, so this is not Gucci, it's Pucci. But look at the man's face. Look at that head.
Yes,
this is an original Italian. Right? This is not an African slave. This is not a servant. It is an original Italian. This is a crest for a very prominent Italian family.
Just want to backtrack there, Tony. Sorry. Caroline says that the Spanish king looks like Mystery. One of our legendary DJs, PC Mystery.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tony. Continue.
No. But I mean, the point here is, Mr. C, you see years of indoctrination and, watching TV and educating the system, you see. Whenever you hear the word Europe, right, you automatically think white.
Right.
I guarantee you that if anybody does a DNA test, any black person doing it, you are going to see a percentage of European DNA in your readings. And there's a reason for that. Most people who see a European reading, most black people who look at a DNA reading and see European, automatically, oh, it was when the slave masters raped the women. You see, this is the same old chestnut story that always comes out. You never hear about the fact that the first Europeans were black. And I have we don't have the time. You know, I can go into the early Romans, the Greeks, you know, all these people that everybody believes are white actually they were the original black people. And their societies over the centuries became more multicultural as time went on. Next slide. So we have recently this lady here who played Wonder Woman.
Yes.
Has been casted now for Cleopatra, the movie, and there's been a big uproar, right? Now, the uproar, believe it or not, doesn't come from black people. It actually comes from North African Arabs who are complaining that a North African actress should be playing this character because Egyptians are North African Arabs, right? But is that really true? Let's look at this. Let's look at this quick video here.
Egypt has always traditionally been given prominence as the height of ancient culture. Nubia is now coming into its own and is being understood to be of equal importance. It is different from ancient Egypt, but it is equally important and not just an adjunct to this Egyptian culture. What archaeologists do when they pull material from the ground or when they translate texts, they bring their own cultural baggage to that interpretation and the baggage of the times that they live in. And so it's imperative that we go back and continually reassess the things that we take as facts. Many of the early archaeologists came to the study of ancient Egypt and ancient Nubia from the perspective of Semitic languages or the study of the Hebrew Bible. And it was very important to them to bring Egypt specifically into the sphere of biblical studies. And so they had to carve Egypt away from Africa to bring it into that sphere. And the way that they did that was they used race. So these early archaeologists effectively made ancient Egypt white in the sense that they made it part of a dominant Western culture, and ancient Nubia was separated from that. It was black. And this was how they took Egypt out of Africa and put it into this Semitic sphere, this biblical sphere.
So
wow. Yes, man.
They're on words, right? They're on words. Not us saying it, they're saying it. That was the ploy. And until this day, they are trying to argue that Egypt is either white or North African. And they're not realizing, of course, that the reason why a lot of the people in that area have a complexion similar to myself has to do with the Ottoman Turks who invaded that area, you see? And those are the descendants of those people. They're not the original people that were there. The original people were black. And some of you who've been to Egypt have probably met some of these black Egyptians who are the descendants of the original peoples, but they don't want to give you that. What they tell you is that you're from sub-Saharan Africa, right? So they've demarcated Africa, giving you sub-Saharan Africa. They claim Egypt, and then they say, well, look, the North African people, those of my complexion, light skin complexion, they've always been there. And that's the lie. And if you buy that, you see, then you're never really going to understand history, because, of course, Egypt was one of the great civilizations of ancient times. And it had an impact on all the surrounding nations that were around it, including the Hebrews and the Canaanites and all these characters and they were also all black. That's what people don't realize. And so it's very important, you see, that they give you the narrative that Egypt was white, because the implication of that is everything next to Egypt is also white. Therefore, the Israelites are white, the Canaanites are white, the Babylonians are white, the Persians are white. And that is so far from the truth. And this is why, obviously, we have these sort of discussions about it. And this is why it's important for us to go back and look at it again and understand how indoctrinated we have been. Because once we have this indoctrination and we don't rid ourselves of it, we keep repeating that. You see? And it's not true. So black people do not only come out of Africa. Yes, some do, but many were in all parts of the world where they made monarchies, they rule these places, they were eventually pushed out. I'm going to get into some of that information about how they were pushed out. And even noted historians tell you that the original Europeans were black. Wow.
Listen, another one, Tony. Listen, you started off at England, then you went to Ireland, then you went to Europe, and wow, you're covering the globe and showing us where we were originally, not just in Africa, but so many other places as well, man. Tony, man, again, my brother, listen, I can't believe Russia.
Yeah. And the thing is, you see, if you're going to tell this story, I mean, thank you, Sean. You do have to provide the evidence. There's no point in me sitting there and saying, no, this was black, that was black. In 1555, this was black. No, you have to look at what they say. They give themselves away. You see, you can't hide the truth forever, right? It's like a coiled spring, right? If you hold a spring too tight, you can hold it for a while, but eventually it's going to spring out and it's going to go all over the place. Yeah. That's what's happening now with our history. As more things are being revealed, we're able to build a story of how we got to be in this position.
And listen, you know what? From what you're saying about with the French guy, because the Three Musketeers was one of my favorite films when I was a child as well. You know, I used to watch. What? We used to get my broom and boss up enough people head enough. So going like some of his Errol Flynn. Right.
And yeah, a black man wrote that book, right?
And it was written by a black man. You know, the Count of Monte Cristo. Come on. Fantastic. No, not the Count of Monte Cristo, the man with the iron mask, I should say. Yeah. No, man, absolutely fantastic, Tony, man. So listen, we've run out of time, ladies and gentlemen, which is a good thing, because, you know, it just goes to show that 31 days is not enough to cover the depth and the richness of our history, and an hour and a couple of minutes is just not enough time to cover what's going on in a week for us. What a week. Final thoughts from yourself, Tony?
No, let's give thanks for Lewis Hamilton again, these accomplishments. Let's thank Marcus Rashford for the work that he's doing. Let's talk about Raheem Sterling, right? The fight goes on. The fight starts in the mind. We have to sort of get the attention of our own people first, and then talk, and then gather together as one. That's where the battle is. It's for the mind.
Definitely. Also, a big thanks going out to MP Dawn Butler for not boxing down the woman, the devil in Parliament, and showing you that black people, we're not just angry. We can be articulate. We can make our point and represent our people the way how our culture is. Absolutely black and beautiful. And we want to say, for all of the queens who were on Loose Women, that was a moment that will stay for us forever and a day. This has been What a Week. My name's been Mr. C, Tony Crossbody. We'll catch you back same time, same place. Remember to like, subscribe, and to share. Thank you. Good night.